Everything for high juicy news. Mema Ubibia Kwaba. I had the latest hot and Aremeyaw Bremo. And so we can subscribe to channel area. Bomodian say obe subscribe. Robeyan say obe click a year the subscribe button. Now barely notification. We understand video for free be upload with the first person once ebeka ASA video. Afi we are now like video no. Give us a thumbs up na fi share ma wo foforo so na when you be here. Now, and some do not write a coso, Ghana Memoano. A fee Yamura ye and Semwa Abeto Yapnoso. Inti a yes, I report here about to just Uncle Muma Inti.
ECG. I had the privilege of chairing the board in July. Because I'm a businessman, the first question I ask myself is that how can ECG award a contract? And when the contract is awarded, all the person does is deliver at the port, present bill of lading, and request for payment. I said, with the greatest respect, I don't want to use a word. This is Parliament. I was shattered. I said, how? And ECG would have to pay. So I realized that ECG was paying a lot of bills when they've not even had access to the goods. And when you ask them, I asked the procurement manager, director of procurement, a question. I said, why did he say, oh, chairman, this is the practice since. This is the practice. And they will bring you document. I listened to honorable member for Secondary, lawyer, you from Secondary, question meeting. And I am adopting his submissions as though they were mine. The time has come. This politics, somebody says MPP, NDC, it's a system problem that I will any day
on YouTube.
Support this minister
all time.
To embark on reforms. How come containers at the ports, containers that have arrived, the bureaucracy at our ports, they say the containers are missing. Mr. Speaker, it is true that when these containers come, there is some connivance with some customs officials, and they sell these containers, these cables that ECG needs after the supplier has been paid. They sell the container, and then people will sell back to ECG. Are we pretending we don't know? Instead of us to pay attention and kill the rots, then we come here, then MPP, NDC, so now they say, oh, maybe it's happening on the MPP, it's happening on the NDC. No. An honorable minister, I know what you can do. If we can give you support to do it, you must adopt a posture, a non-partisan posture, and tackle the rots. But if we all want to approach it, MPP, NDC, Mr. Speaker, it will remain. NDC will spend 4 years, 16 years, 20 years, the same thing will be there. They will come into opposition, and the same thing would arise again.
These politicians who are behind these things should escape the judgment. I am calling for an immediate arrest of Afenyo Markin. I am calling for the immediate arrest of Matthew Opoku Prampe Honorable, the former running mate of the MPP. And I'm also calling for the immediate arrest of Mahamadu Dubik, who are principal actors at the time these things occurred. They should be arrested. And you see, it's time we hold persons and individuals highly responsible. We cannot continue to country where we talk every day and we do little. The repercussions of these things are affecting generations, affecting our children, affecting our future. When President Mahama promised that he will reset the nation, these are some of the evil that we have to be confronted with, and we must deal with it head on. It's time to step politics aside and deal with people. If these had happened in GES, a headmaster would have been held responsible. If it had happened in a private bank, the board chairman would have been answering questions at BNI. I expect that immediately we return. Afenyo Markin should be under arrest. Dubik Mahama should be under arrest. And then Matthew Opoku Prempeh, who is the minister who was supposed to supervise all these things, should take some responsibility for where we have come to. I think that is unfair to treat our nation like this. And every day, what we do is to sit on the media and talk about it. And then it ends up nothing. Good evening. And then good evening to our cherished listeners. First and foremost, what I stated in respect to the three individuals you just mentioned is not an allegation, but matters of fact. One, we are all aware that the period within which these wanton criminality occur, a criminality that involves a belt of individuals. We all know that it happened in the previous government. In fact, the board chairman, Honorable Afenyo Markin, have actually made a public confession as a board chairman, taking responsibility to tell the public that he was all aware about questionable procurement practices for which his superintendent oversaw as a board chairman. At the same time, ECG at the time had a managing director who is Dubik Mahama. Within the same period, Honorable Matthew Opoku Pempe was the minister in charge of energy, under which ministry ECG is situated. Is it not a matter of fact that given the state of this matter and the seriousness that it deserves, that a board chairman now want to run away and sacrifice, persons who cannot come out and defend themselves, saying that he knew that there were some questionable procurement practices which involved these same containers, and that he's running away from responsibility and now calling on Parliament to support the minister. Is it not in the interest of the state for Afenyo Markin to be arrested? Now Parliament is on recess. He cannot run away to Parliament under the disguise of performing parliamentary duties. He should be arrested immediately for questioning, because this criminality occurred under his tenure as a board chairman. Quite apart from that, in his own public confessions, these confessions are things that should be made on a docket, because these are material facts. A board chairman is saying that I knew that something was wrong, ECG, at the time I was a board chairman, but yet I kept quiet until the entire country has been shortchanged. We all know the implications of mismanagement at ECG. One, you, the journalist, myself, the poor taxpayer, would have had to buy power at a higher cost because some individuals are stealing. Number two, the current doomsday which we are facing, I have said, is not scientific. It's a sabotage from within. And clearly, these are some of the things that brings the debts that we have at ECG currently. A board chairman says, I knew about it. I even questioned the procurement, manager director. And he says, and then you kept quiet, you sat on it, you looked over it, you midwifed it, and today, because it is a crime, the public is talking about it, we should make it normal. We should sing, songs to it. We should speak about it in the media. The perpetrators go scot-free. The big politicians who are behind these things should escape the judgment. I am calling for an immediate arrest of Afenyo Markin. I am calling for the immediate arrest of Matthew Opoku Pempe, Honorable, the former running mate of the MPP. And I'm also calling for the immediate arrest of Mahamadu Dubik, who are principal actors at the time these things occurred. They should be arrested. And you see, it's time we hold persons and individuals highly responsible. We cannot continue to be a country where we talk every day and we do little. The repercussions of these things are affecting generations, affecting our children, affecting our future. When President Mahama promised that he will reset the nation, these are some of the evil that we have to be confronted with, and we must deal with it head on. It's time to step politics aside and deal with people. If these had happened in GES, a headmaster would have been held responsible. If it had happened in a private bank, the board chairman would have been answering questions at BNI. I expect that immediately we return. Afenyo Markin should be under arrest. Dubik Mahama should be under arrest. And then Matthew Opoku Pemba, who is the minister who was supposed to supervise all these things, should take some responsibility for where we have come to. I think that is unfair to treat our nation like this. And every day, what we do is to sit on the media and talk about it. And then it ends up nothing. You know?
I see, but are you not going ahead of yourself or even the law if you say these persons must be arrested? Because I struggle to understand the role they played in this whole saga just because you say that they were the principal actors, and in fact point to Alexander Afenyo Markin that he's made a public statement to say that he was aware of this. But if he is aware of this, is it any form of culpability for which reason he should be arrested and put behind bars?
Well, he was a board chairman who was supposed to, as it were, to be the headmaster of ECG, and that he comes to this country in terms of law, even in terms of leadership, some element of responsibility. And these are matters of crime that one would have to be vicariously responsible. He had actually come to make a public confession to say that even before the investigation goes further, he as the board chairman was aware that there was something wrong in ECG as far as procurement is concerned. And these are procurement. He also indicated that it occurred with a coalition of persons within customs and GPHs. So don't you think that he's a principal, actor who is supposed to be facing investigation by this time as a board chairman to give leads so that the country can take people within ECG responsible for these heinous, barbaric, uncivilized crime that affects life and affects the generations, affects children, because when life goes out, children who are in hospitals under oxygen, they die. Persons who are under, some sort of, medications and treatment, persons who are under oxygen, older people, they all die because there's no light. All because some individuals who are stealing unquestionably from ECG think that they should continue to steal, and that the board chairman, at the time he was a board chairman, was aware that there was something wrong, but yet kept quiet. They lost the election. If investigative bodies under the minister, Honorable John Napo, had not unraveled these crimes and made it public that there was some wrong happening within ECG at the port, will Afenyo Markin come out to tell the public about what he said? He would have kept quiet. It is not covering of the same crimes we have talked about. I have told you that, look, Afenyo Markin's noise is not in the genuine interest of this country, but all attempt to cover up the crimes committed and perpetrated by the previous government. Didn't you see that recently Afenyo Markin is the darling boy of President Akufo Addo, and individuals who took part in the PBS scandal, which we are yet to get to? Can't you see that all of a sudden Afenyo Markin is the hero of President Akufo Addo because he has decided to be noisy in Parliament just to cover up for persons who have committed crimes against this country? And now he has made a public confession about some crimes that he knows, and he should still be walking free. He should not be walking free. We don't need an angel to arrest Afenyo Markin at this time. We don't. Parliament is on recess. He should be arrested to provide or to lead the investigation for us to get to know how come this number of containers paid for with taxpayers' money got missing at the port, that he, the board chairman, didn't have the responsibility to inquire and to ask the management of ECG to report to him about the status of containers and orders that have been made by ECG. Don't you think you would only have to be an irresponsible board chairman to allow this to happen?
But you keep referring to Alexander Afenyo Markin, and that's a public commentary that he's made. But does the party have any real evidence beyond reasonable doubt that these three persons you are referring to have a hand in the underdealings?
Well, there is no evidence that is stronger than what a man confesses and says. The man has told you.
But he didn't say what he's done. He just said that he was aware, and being aware, he could just be invited for questioning. But to say,
the board chairman, the board chairman of City FM, you think that when you send two journalists to the north, and 1 week they were supposed to spend a week and they are not back after 2 weeks, your board chairman would not ask what is keeping those journalists? You think your board chairman will not ask the managing director what is happening to the journalists that we send to the north? Do you think so? Do you need any other evidence more than confessions, statements of individuals who are prime actors within the institution that these have happened? Do you need anything more than that?
But that amounts to questioning, not necessarily an arrest.
No, it doesn't amount to question. That question is not, left for journalists. That question is, that answer should be given on a docket. It should be a caution statement. Afenyo Markin should be given statement to investigative bodies at this time, because he's a principal actor, a supervisor of ECG at the time these crimes occurred. You see, often when things happen, we let the powerful individual go scot-free, and we go after the grassroots that they use to perpetrate these crimes. Why are you investigating a Chinese man who, with the collusion of Ghanaians, and it would not have happened without the involvement of high-ranking managers at ECG, committing these crimes without the managing director, without the board chairman at this time, immediately arrested to answer questions for these, irresponsible supervision of the institution. I mean, at the end of the day, don't you think that you and I, we are paying high cost of electricity? Even that, look at the state of our electricity now, today. Not because government upon government are not investing to stabilize our power issue or power crisis, but because individuals take deliberate steps to mismanage the institution, individuals take deliberate steps to steal from the institution, and that the taxpayer, the ordinary poor Ghanaian, should continue to suffer every year, every time, under the disguise that we politicize the issues, we talk about it, and the big fishes are let off the hook to walk. It shouldn't be allowed to continue.
Have you triggered any action with the investigative bodies or law enforcement agencies to have these people hauled? If you are very much convinced,
I'm very hopeful that after this holiday, and also because Parliament is on recess, all effort will be made to get Afenyo Markin, arrested.
Why didn't it come earlier?
I'm just saying this is the issue today. The issue just started, isn't it? And the man has come to make, self-confessions. And so we all now know, and the public now know, that at the time this crime was being committed, it didn't just reflect at the side of the board chairman. He also questioned and didn't get reasonable answers, but elected to be quiet and to conceal that conversation, even as the crime or the crimes within ECG continued, leading to loss of huge sums of money. Today, he said so on the floor of Parliament. And such an individual should be arrested because he is not just a spectator, but he is the headmaster and supervisor of ECG at the time all these things occurred under President Akufo Addo. Afenyo Markin, the Honorable, is the board chairman of ECG who have come to speak on the matter. And that matter for me is closer to giving testimony of the confession, and he should be arrested.
So when should we expect this action that you are going to take, and which of the investigative bodies are going to launch?
I am not going to be the arresting body, but every effort will be made to ensure that the promise that was made to the people of Ghana, that they are believed that a certain group of individuals, our own brothers, have chosen to cut this country into pieces to their advantage and personal use and benefit, other than the public interest, will bring those people to book. Every effort to be made to, fulfill that mandate upon which Ghanaians voted for the NDC to come to power. We must walk the talk because something indeed is fundamentally wrong. When we said to you that President Akufo Addo was supervising the biggest scandalous government against the people of Ghana, these are the things we were talking about. When we said under President Akufo Addo, crime was normalized, mismanagement was normalized, corruption became a king of the government, these are the things we're talking about. These are evidences, and that a bold step must be made. And Ghanaians should support President Mahama to bring every one of these persons to book. We must tackle corruption head on. We must disincentivize public stealing. We must discourage politicians from stealing from the ordinary Ghanaian. Other than that, the future of your country, the future of your children cannot be guaranteed. And this is one of such issues that the nation must be serious about it. All and sundry must support the investigating institutions to bring the big fishes to book. Why is the managing director still working free? Why should Dubik be working free at this time? And this is not just the rush at ECG. There are many more, and as the day goes, you will get to know.
We wait to see. Thank you very much. That's Mustafa Gbande. He's Deputy Director of Operations at the Jubilee House and also Deputy General Secretary of the NDC.
We've been joined by the Minister.
Right.
The Minister in charge of Energy and Green Transition, John Jenapo, is joining us right now on Zoom for some further exclusive detail to this matter. Mr. Jenapo, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Is my sound okay?
It's better. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, let me stay on you. A bit. How far back did the investigation by the committee reveal as to how long this thing has been going on? I mean, the containers not being accounted for, and as Senor mentioned, auctioning of containers. Because he says when he was serving on this advisory board of the Energy Ministry, the ECG at the time said, based on his own information, this thing started as far back as 2022. But is that consistent with what the committee found in their investigation?
Thank you very much. First of all, maybe from what is happening, I should have broadened the scope of the committee. I didn't even know these containers were missing. My main focus was, first at the transition, I was given a figure of 3,000 containers. Then on the 17th, I was sworn in. On the 24th, I visited the harbour myself to see for myself the status of these containers. When I went there, I was given another figure of 2,500. So I got a bit alarmed. I said, why 3,000? Why 2,500? So I believe the president, and we thought that we should set up a committee to look into the matter and advise us on how to clear them. My main focus was how can we get these containers out of the port quickly, because they had incurred demurrage of about 1.5 billion. You know, demurrage keeps compounding. And so I asked them what happens eventually. I was told that sometimes dapaah attempts to auction the containers. And so my primary focus was how do we get the containers out quickly so we can save cost. Only for the committee to come and tell me that, look, contrary to the 2,500 you were given, 1,346 containers cannot be accounted for. On ECG's books or documents, they have 2,500 thereabouts. But when we went there to do a detailed count of the containers, they realized that a lot of them were not available. So that was the scope of the committee. And so I agree with Senyor's suggestion that this should just be a starting point. Now we have to get into the details. And also they took the opportunity to look at the procurement structure of ECG. That is where they realized that, for instance, in 2022, and that answers your question, the system began to decay, particularly from 2022. Because if you look at 2022, and you look at the value of procurement, then you realize that they began to deviate. Then by 2023, their planned procurement, and normally planned means that that's what the board has approved, was 935 million Ghana cedi, almost $1 billion. But by the end of the year, 2023, they had procured 8.3 billion. So they procured about 7.4 billion more than had been approved. And the 1 billion was approved because of their revenue streams. So when you shoot the procurement by 7.3 billion, the containers will come and they'll get stuck at the port because you don't have the money to clear them. But that did not stop there. One would have thought that having experienced that in the next year, the board would have insisted that they stick to their procurement plan and also put together a plan to clear those containers. And if you look at page 13 of the report, 2024, their approved budget was 1.397 billion. By the end of the year, their procurement was 8.2 billion. So if you put 2023 and 2024 together, just these 2 years, they procured more than 14 billion what their budget could accommodate. And that is the source of all these problems.
More than 14 billion.
More than 14 billion.
Cedis.
In 2 years. Cedis. Over the 2 years, their procurement should have been less than 2.6 billion thereabout. But they shot it by 14 billion. And the unfortunate thing is, the containers get to the port. The containers contains cables. ECG is unable to clear the containers, and yet they are ordering more of the same cables. I mean, it doesn't make sense at all. Because you have containers stuck at the port. They contain aluminum cables. You claim you don't have money to clear those cables, and yet you are placing orders for more of the same aluminum cables. And that is why they end up with some factories. These factories then melt these brand new aluminum cables into aluminum rods, export them to China, and they convert those rods into aluminum cables again. And ECG then orders those same aluminum cables again back into the country. They are unable to clear them, and they get back to this factory. And so it's been a syndicate. It's like a cartel. that has been operating. And so it's good that this has come up. And I'm happy that all of us are discussing this issue. The issue of invitation of the MD and all those would follow now. In fact, what the committee did was basically to look at the reports and to reconcile a lot of the documentation. Now that this report is out, and we've written to the investigative agencies and the law enforcement agencies, I'm sure that the former MD, current executives, everybody would be given a fair hearing and a fair opportunity. For instance, if the procurement is more than 7 billion in 2023, you'll be asked questions. Why did you procure over and above? What was the mandate? What was the rationale? And all that would enact that. Then these containers, I do know that they have serial numbers. They are received at the port. There's a manifest, there's customs, there's dapaah, and all of them are operating so far. So you need a team to go in detail and do a forensic analysis and trace the numbers. When were they received? Who signed off the containers? Who took charge of the containers? Were they delivered to ECG? Is it because maybe there's some poor records? We need to investigate all of that so that we'll get to the bottom of it. And so, also internally, we need to restructure ECG. Decouple the procurement unit from the estates unit and put the qualified procurement personnel. And that is where I thought, my good friends, Senor, let's take a second look at it, because if you don't get a qualified person to man the procurement, he wouldn't appreciate a lot of these issues, and you're going to have these lapses. The MD's mandate, he has a mandate where he can give a contract of below $1 million. And so a day he can decide to sign 15 contracts, 900, 900, 900. We must look at that again and tighten it further so that we can see what is happening. And even the agents that they contracted, some of them are not registered clearing agents. They are not registered, so they take the contract and then go and give it to a third party. And so even in terms of checks and balances and accountability, it becomes a major problem. But so far, the arrests we've made and the information available indicates that 2022, 2023, 2024, it was very, very pervasive. And those are the areas or the years that we are focusing on.
And well, then that's consistent with what Senor indicated earlier. And I started with him because he served on the advisory board of the Ministry of Energy between 2020, 2022. That's the first part of during Akufo Addo's administration.
I've been on the Ministry Advisory Board, I think, from 2014 to 2022.
I see. No, yeah. That's a long period. I mean, that's about what, 8 years?
He's right. Yes. And you see, the report clearly shows the years. So, for instance, if you take 2022, if you look at their procurement, single source 33, board approval 0.
0.
So what it means is that the whole of 2022, and you can check from page 12, you see the table. The table below explains the excessive use of single source procurement as opposed to more competitive methods. Of the 142 contracts awarded, 0 went to the board for approval. But when it goes to the board, then you have a 9-member team that would evaluate it. Then 2023, 703 contracts were awarded. Only 21 went to the board. Then 2024, 601 contracts were awarded. Only 7 went to the board. 425 single source. So clearly, it tells you that that's where the problem is coming from.
But help me understand this, because if you're talking about this number of contracts awarded and just a fraction of it goes to the board. I mean, 703, only 21 goes to the board. 601, only 7 goes to the board. Who awards these contracts, and how are they executed, for instance, without the MD's notice, or as it were, he also notifying the board?
Notice. It's the MD who awards the contract. It's the MD. The MD awards the contract.
So in this instance, he fails to notify the board?
No. You see, there are two ways. You take the contract to the board for approval before you even execute it.
Right.
Or you execute it based on the limit. And like I said, he has a limit of $1 million. So he can choose to sign off every day 10 contracts or 5 contracts within that threshold. And so by the end of the year, you have a lot of contracts, but all these contracts would not go to the board. But then there will be a report to the board. And I thought the board would then have insisted from 2022 that, look, no, how come in 2022 we didn't have the opportunity to approve these contracts? 2023 will not allow it. 2024 will not allow it. And so, for instance, this year, 2025, the norm should be that as much as possible, they have to go to the board. It's only under emergency circumstances that the MD usually would exercise that authority or mandate. But now it's become the norm rather than the exception. And as you can see from the figures, these are some of the systemic failures that we have to correct immediately.
I asked this question because Senior had earlier made reference to what the former MD, Samuel Dubik Mahama, is reported to have said, that he wasn't aware of some of these happenings and the details of it. You said he was not aware.
No, he was not invited to the committee. That's all.
Yes, but I'm quoting what you
said. No. Aware that he's signing the contract. He signs the contract. Who else signs the contract? None of these contracts have been done without the visibility of the MD. Nobody goes around and signs up to $1 million. Who has the mandate? He's the one who has it. He's raised issues about auctioning. He's not aware of the auctioning. And that's, maybe it's the auctioning
so
also.
That's all. That's
the auctioning.
So I just wanted because you
the contract is the contract is the one doing it.
Yes, because
it's the auctioning that he's raised issues with.
But in 2022, you questioned him.
Yes.
Why that was being done, and he, according to you, he explained that the ECG owed, they had debts, and so they had to auction to pay.
No. Let me go over this again. I'm saying that ECG has excused their inability to clear the cargo for lack of money. All right? Then the question is, if you can't clear cargo and you have so much, why are you buying more? That is what my minister is saying. Then the next question is, they were hoping to have a switch, a swap of government indebtedness to ECG with their duties so that they can get
the money.
Yeah, those were the issues that were raised at the time. But it's also neither here nor there. The key thing here is that these are assets of the state. Why are they not accounted for? 2, why do we get to where we are? And the issues that Napo is raising is even more serious. I mean, no ratification by the board. Do we just have a budget? There are 2 ways in management, and I'm not going to now speak to ECG as a limited liability. In management, you go to your board for approval. The directing body of an entity is the board. They are ultimately responsible. The directors of a company are ultimately responsible. So, Minister, I'm hoping that this matter, we don't leave it hanging as a policy matter. The directors of ECG must be held responsible, everyone within that time. They are responsible for what has happened. If we can't account for it, they are responsible for what has happened. You know that contracts are going. What's the efficiency in it? The reason why I was saying that we can't blame this on the qualification of the procurement head is because these are fundamental things that you don't even need procurement expertise to be able to manage. If you are not a certified or a chartered procurement professional, it does not excuse you to make this kind of errors or these kinds of omissions. How do you give contracts when you don't have capacity?
Okay. 2,
how is it that you don't account for things? Even you, minister, you are not a chartered procurement person. You wouldn't do what is being done. So that is the matter. People must learn to be responsible. Don't hide it. I didn't have the qualifications, so I couldn't do it. It's not that just common sense. It's more color matter.
Okay, but you see, there's another aspect of the report that, Mr. Janapo, you touched on briefly. I'm looking at the page 1.4, summary of the key findings, excessive procurement. In 2022, I see single-sourced contracts 33. In 2023, that single-source contracts figure rises to 512. And I'm seeing the proposals and the opposition to more of these competitive methods that were found out. Now, that is because you say you've started engaging and having people answer questions. What was the reasoning behind awarding such high numbers of single source contracts within a particular year?
That is the question.
And that is why the procurement man says he was under pressure.
Under pressure from
so
where?
It means that from above. And the question is, and that's what Afenyo asks, who is the above? Who is that above who puts pressure on you to sign such outrageous contracts? You know, my brother, let's face it. What happened is condemnable. It's not good. It's not the best. It should never happen. And it shouldn't have happened. I mean, you can't award contracts 1 year, 33. The next year, 512. I mean, what has changed between 2022 and 2023 such that you have such a ballooning of contracts? And then, like Senor said, then you realize that you're unable to clear the containers. Instead of you to slow down, 2024 is getting worse. And you see, these things, there's always a lag. What will happen is that most of these things, you feel the effects in subsequent years. So this year, for instance, we are saddled with a debt of 80 billion cedis in the energy sector, arising directly from ECG. 80 billion, that is how much we need today to be able to satisfy IPPs, fuel producers, and suppliers. And every day, suppliers to ECG come to my office complaining that banks are threatening to sell their houses, banks are chasing them, and they are struggling, and I'm helpless. Look, the money we get, we have to use it to pay IPPs. We have to use it to buy fuel. We have to use it to pay gas producers. And so virtually nothing is left for ECG to be able to pay these suppliers. And most of these suppliers are Ghanaian businessmen who've gone to the banks to raise loans. It means that you're going to have a high level of default. And then non-performing loans will go up. The banks will now be compelled to increase interest rates so that decent people like Senor and Co who are going to look for money, they'll be paying higher interest rates, and it can lead to banks collapsing. So this that you might just sit down and think that it's just an ECG-related affair. And that's why Senor said the finance ministry and all of us ought to be concerned. It can affect the fiscal, and that will impact everybody. And worst of all, these are equipment that we need to supply power to the people of Ghana. Now the equipment are being sold, they are being auctioned off, some are being stolen. And so it even affects the supply of power to everybody in this country. So those who are on social media and trying to get overly political, look, this affects all of us. And I think that one, we must stop that immediately. We must reform ECG. We must cut costs and make it more efficient. We must also hold people responsible for their actions and inactions. We must retrieve these containers wherever they are. Either we retrieve the goods or we retrieve the monetary value from those who are engaged in this activity. When we do that, we'll be making some progress as a country. And that is my focus. I'm very happy that President Mahama has given me all the assurance and all the support to do what is right and proper. This should have been done years ago. Be that as it may, let's take this opportunity and clean the system. Look, I get very worried every day when I look at the energy sector figures. I get very, very worried. We need 2.5 billion every month to satisfy all the value chain players. We get only 1.3 billion. So what it means is that every month we incur a loss of 1.2 billion. So by the end of the year, you can imagine the cost to the state. And then we have to then follow the Minister of Finance to use monies that we're supposed to use for health, education, infrastructure to pay for somebody's negligence or inefficiency. Something must stop, and somebody must stop this and begin to turn the curve.
So the reason why I stayed on you a bit earlier was because of your service on the advisory board of the energy sector. When this got to you, your notice in 2022, what did you do as an advisory board of the energy sector? What did you do?
I think we found it reasonable that the ministry intervenes and possibly considers the recommendations of ECG at the time. But I just left soon after, so I couldn't have done any more. But one of the things you just need to know, most of these cables are coming from China.
I see.
Now, these cables come from China. They end up in the hands of Chinese, who smells them and ship them back to China. Good morning, Ghana.
With all of this, because some of this borders on law, but a lot of it on procurement and corruption as well. ECG's position was that they were not subject to the public procurement laws. And for that matter, to the extent that there was some autonomy, they could do this without necessarily recourse to the Public Procurement Authority Act per se. The minister says that cannot be the case, but ECG went ahead to do it. So who should be held responsible for a position as taken by the company at the time, which led to they procuring these containers, even at the time when it was clear they didn't need that much?
Okay, so I see two aspects of the question. Procuring in excess of what they need, that's one side. And then the first part of the question is the ECG saying they are not subject to the procurement law. Okay, so on the matter of not being subject to the procurement law, what I'll say is that as you shared the AG's opinion with us, because it's the Attorney General's opinion. I know the Attorney General is the #1 law enforcement agent and also the government's advisor. I will go with the minister that it should be shown to the new Attorney General. You say, like sometimes we say new king, new law. It's possible. Because, you see, so what I'm doing here is that having read the opinion as a lawyer, to be objective, I see the position they've taken. By giving the same facts, another lawyer will come to a different position. So I believe that it should be litigated thoroughly. So even if the Attorney General were to take the position that he will go with, that's if Dr. Ayeni were to take the position that he will go with the previous Attorney General, for me, I even encourage litigation in court. Let's test it to the highest. Yes.
It's already gone to court.
The matter of this not subject.
Yes, it's already gone to court.
Is it the one that Fiamekpo did? No.
I think, let's see.
All right.
I'll cite the case for you.
So we should litigate it thoroughly. It thoroughly. The one I've seen, they were saying that procurement breaches should be dealt with as criminal offense. When you find it, let's go on with this. So the main point we're making is I see what the
Center for Democratic Empowerment versus ECG as defendants, Dubik and then Kwame Jan Budu.
Okay, so it's still pending, or is that a judgment?
It's judgment.
I haven't seen it. And the court supports the...
Edwin is familiar with it. You can speak to it.
Okay. So me, what I'm going with, all right, since I haven't seen it, what I'm going with is that obviously it looks to me like that's a high court decision.
It's a high
so
court
it's
decision.
not final.
Yeah.
Because you see, what we should be very clear is that the fact that something is law doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. No, the law itself, you can measure its quality. What we are seeing is that, right, ECG has gotten a leeway to do things that are untoward.
Yes.
So we should be interested in curbing it. So for me, to the extent that that is a high court decision, it doesn't close the matter.
Okay.
I support the minister that he should take it up with the Attorney General as step one, and then let us know publicly what the Attorney General's opinion is on it. So that if the Attorney General, as I said, it's possible he can agree with the previous one or depart. And then looking also at the high court decision.
For we somewhere about better yepono so make out say so we can subscribe to channel area but more than say over subscribe. Now I like video don't give us a thumbs up now fi share ma wo foforo so now when you be here now and somewhere also e wo Ghana memoir also betimi a chere wadwen afa ye and somewhere nyina ho e wo comment box ni mu mo beti me kabim in my next video.
Thanks for watching. Like and share the video. You can also drop your comment. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell to turn on the notification.